launching our second cohort very shortly. So if anybody has any interest, we're happy to have you as part of the next cohort that will be coming up. You can look at fintechfactory.pk where the application will be open. So coming to the topic today and introduce the discussion members with me. So we're going to talk about the importance of cloud. So we've been hearing about cloud a lot. There's a lot of conversations going about it. But what role it is playing, what is the importance, what are some of the downsides, and how the large organizations look at it, how startups look at it. These are some of the things that we'll talk about, especially from the practitioner panel. So today, we're very honored to have these amazing gentlemen. Faisal Anwar is the group head and CIO at UBA, which is probably one of the largest banks in the country with over 1,200 branches. So we're going to hear how cloud plays a role in their decision making and what they're looking for. And as we said in our promotion, Imran heads RapiCompute, which is probably the first true global cloud provider in Pakistan. And they're providing in-house certified secure in-country option compared to options like Amazon and Google Cloud. So and he deals with a lot of multinationals, global corporates, banks, as well as startups. So we're going to get into the discussion a little bit. So we're going to start off by understanding what cloud is, right? And how it has evolved in the past few years compared to traditional data center options. We're going to start off with Faisal. Faisal would like to understand from you how you look at the cloud, and it doesn't have to be public cloud, it could be just a private cloud, but how do you see cloud playing a role in your enterprise strategy?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. So broadly speaking, the way we see it, we embarked on this journey quite early in life as a bank. We made a very informed decision. This was back in sometime in 2006 that we looked at the importance how the technology will develop through. So the aspects of looking into it is how it's adding to the operating cost. It is adding to the operational efficiency of an enterprise. So back in 2005-06, we turned out to be one of the leading financial institutions who had set up their private cloud. So by regulation, we are not permitted. That's how it's being regulated, because there is a lot of customer data that we hold, due to which by regulation, by design, as financial institutions, we are not allowed to go public. We went in 2006, so just to give you a perspective of how operational efficiency is being achieved. So back in 2005, this is pre the private cloud journey that we initiated. The first time we were actually building our infrastructure, that is the white space, as we call it, and some call it data centers. So we sized it about 40 racks, which is 40 racks, and now hundreds of servers running the bank from its backend, which adds up to the electricity load, which adds up to the heat dissipation that we are doing. And besides that, it's the most expensive place in any enterprise that it can get. While we were doing this, evaluating this, and I can give you in a small perspective, otherwise I'll be here the whole evening talking about it, because it's been a very long journey. From 40 racks, we migrated, and today we stand at a consumption of 8 racks. So this is how the operational efficiency is being achieved. So imagine a bank running on a 40-rack data center to an 8-rack data center. Gradually, natively, we have enabled the bank to be cloud ready. So we run our own private cloud today. By any benchmark, if at a size of an enterprise size of ours, if it is 60-40 in a ratio, which means 60% natively cloud ready and 60% physical as servers, is a good position to be in. But it takes a lot of pride for me to claim that we are about 71% virtualized. as a financial institution. So we've taken a leap down, and it has contributed in a lot of operational efficiency beside anything else. So white space consumption is one aspect of it. There are multiple other aspects, which is operational efficiency. We had a very reduced and agile time to deliver. A machine that we used to take about 6 to 8 hours to build can be built in 5 to 10 minutes. It natively takes care of a lot of issues related to high availability of systems. Because a lot of legacies, and we actually at the times, we had a lot of legacy systems. So the issue was how we're going to transform all of this into a high availability. So all of those have been also. So that's how we see it. In a medium to long term, this is again like my personal views. We look forward for the regulation to permit us to go beyond this. Naturally, there are challenges. I am personally advocate to this that we need to make sure as enterprise that we voice this that international players must place their nodes locally in Pakistan. We do not advocate that we should have taken a node in a Reddit node somewhere in the Amazon cloud in some other geographical zones. There are complications around. So natively, technically there is no limitation. Bandwidth is not a limitation. So we are far from all of those boundaries. So give you a perspective, in 2005, a bank would have 2 MB internet link. Imagine today telling somebody that you have a 2 MB link, in your home you have 30 MB. So the banks now running just standalone, we're running multiple STMs even on the internet side. So those limitations are far gone, but at the same time there are a lot of legal boundaries around which we operate. So natively, not only security issues, but a lot of geophysical laws around which we need to have compliance. So I personally feel and very strongly advocate that, and I always push forward because I got a lot of push from the counter sites, which are the principals, to give a push on the global cloud nodes. And my answer always is that we would prefer the nodes to come to Pakistan. We are open, we are natively ready. So like I said, I claim that about 71% of the bank today is ready to go on a cloud, subject to regulatory approval. So we run a private cloud today as a bank. We are a bank, not a pure tech house. We would like to leverage on the other cloud facilities. But as I meant the regulation, that was it. Neither was it.
I think that's someone is trying to wait on the track based on the
So we are really looking forward to how it unfolds as it goes. But like I said, we are very forward looking. So we have natively enabled every part of the infrastructure where possible, and we are about 71% now natively virtualized and cloud ready. So that's how we see it, and that's how. So we are actually, we think that we are right up there, up the curve, and we'll take it from there how it unfolds.
So one of the things is that when you operate a cloud, and maybe Imran can add to it. So one of the big things is the consideration of high availability, right? Sorry. Yeah. So one of the things is availability, right? We as a startup, I run a startup. So as a startup, we had an amazing experience. So we were on a very big multinational cloud, and I don't know if I can name them and shame them, but it was an absolute disaster. So I don't know if anybody their reps is here or not, but so we were getting frequent outages. One server going down, other server going down. We were in their Singapore data center, and I think the final nail in the coffin was that there were a sort of a data center wide outage, multiple servers going down, and some were recovered, but there was no recovery for a primary database server. Now we're so used to the cloud, we kept all backups in that same cloud. unfortunately. And the core database server was rough. And so first they said, oh, we're restoring it after about 24 hours and frantic emails. Said, oh, you have to authorize us to do a manual restore. And so, okay, fine, like, I'm dead in the water, like I'm floating, I don't have an engine, whatever, do it. Say, well, give us a waiver that you may lose all your data. Okay, fine, I'll give that waiver. I don't have really a choice right now. So if we were down for 4 days in a multi-country, multi-location database because it just went down. And it's a 3-letter word company, one of the oldest tech companies in the world. I'm not going to name them. So when you hear these kind of horror stories, right? So you get scared. Can I trust the cloud with my data, right? Yes, everybody's running on it, but when a blue chip and a blue colored logo comes and says that to you, what do you do in that? So how do you address that, Imran? And maybe we come back to Faisal on that. Is that how are you prepared to resolve these kind of issues?
You should also end this story by telling everybody which sort of body eventually went.
No, I went to you to save my company eventually, and you did a great job. But I don't want to sell really hard with it.
If I could answer that by just speaking a little earlier in our history. So basically, the group company that belonged to Cybernet. So we were always into the co-location business, as I said, into getting racks and setting up these white spaces. And then we saw that shift that customer was referring to, where the story stopped being about racks and infrastructure and started becoming about services. So we took a very bold move back in 2010, where we decided we'd stop building any further data centers. And we decided that we'd now move towards a virtualized cloud environment and now change our business model towards offering services to customers. Now, the minute you decide to do that, and this is related to the question you just asked me, then the fundamental questions change. So when you look at co-location or data center hosting, very little responsibility lies on you besides the power, cooling, and the access to connectivity. But when you talk about offering services, then there's a whole new layer of responsibilities that you open yourself up to. So from the get-go, when we decided to get into cloud, we knew that we'd have to follow best practices in terms of the kind of infrastructure we set up, and not cut corners simply because of Pakistan. And we had tons of issues that we could have taken. Paying capacity nahi hai, people can't pay, it's too expensive. But we knew we couldn't cut corners on infrastructure. That was one thing that we always were careful of. Also, we try to understand deeply the kind of services that people actually wanted to run on our cloud. देखिए आज दुनिया में बहुत अलग किस्म के क्लाउड है, and even Amazon के भी 50 अलग किस्म की सर्विसेज हैं. कुछ बनी हुई है 5 लोगों की कंपनी के लिए, कुछ बनी हुई 5,000 लोगों की कंपनी के लिए. But it's very important to profile what kind of services you're going to offer and what kind of services customer are going to run. So we did that as well. And we met a lot of banks, a lot of financial organizations, a lot of FMCGs, manufacturing, local, multinationals, and we got to understand the requirement care. And then we built, and then we set around designing the architecture around it. For example, one of our earliest wins was a bank actually. And they were, at that time, internet banking back in 2011. This is when we started off 8 years ago. Was a big deal. Internet banking, we were getting internet banking, easy browser पे जाए, bank account दिखे. आज तो खैर बहुत फीचर थे, उस जमाने में basic 2-3 फीचर होते थे, आप account check कर सकते थे, identity कर सकते थे. And companies like Owais Zaidi and TPS were selling banking options. And the problem was none of these banks could predict the workload. कितना percentage of account holders would actually hit on the portal every day. So one of the banks, it was a very large size bank and now it's merged with another bank. They said, here we want to put the front end of the internet banking and the processing part on your cloud. Data को banking पे होगा, data हमें लेके आ सकते. इस वक्त हमारा एक भी customer नहीं. We were still in beta phase. Our logo actually had beta written on it for the first year. So we were very fortunate to have a very hardcore, difficult deployment on the first get-go, where we had to commit to a bank that Eid पे, Ramadan पे, weekend पे, salary के बाद जब आपके लाखों deposit holders आपकी internet banking पे आएंगे, so I assure you that I will be resilient, I will be able to handle the traffic, Nobody will complain, nobody will call your call center, I can't see my funds, I can't transfer funds, I can't take out funds, and so on and so forth. And that we would be resilient and that we would be delivering the performance. So we were alhamdulillah successful in doing that. That is just one example. But then it led on to a lot more things. And then cloud जो है ना, हम किसी की भी journey पढ़ लें, हम Jeff Bezos की पढ़ लें, अब IBM की पढ़ लें, आप Azure की पढ़ लें. It's always an evolutionary process. Nobody can say, because cloud is a classic case of variable workloads. There is no such thing as a fixed workload. ये आपकी अपनी company का cloud नहीं. You can't say कि मेरे ये इदारे हैं, मेरे departments हैं. This is the kind of workload that's going to come, और मैंने boxes ले लिया और ये ऐसे चलेगा. It's absolutely variable workloads. You could have 50 customers come in a month, which have a transactional workload you're just not prepared for, right? So you always have to shoot for the most difficult scenario there is. And then obviously चीजें आई, things that you guys can relate to, SAP की deployments आई, अब 50 customer है SAP के, 50 of them are absolutely different. कोई pharma में, कोई FMCG में, कोई मसाले बनाता है तो कोई packaging बनाता है. You cannot have the same workloads and the same kind of pattern to it. So cloud is one thing that actually evolves and becomes better with every passing month of service that you get to somebody. And every outage that you get, every service issue that you have, actually gives you the ability to pivot and do something better. I won't say that 8 साल में हमारे पास outages नहीं आए, but because of the first day we architected it a certain way, we learned to work around it. आज भी अगर आप Azure की website पे जाएं, Amazon पे जाएं, they've got more than 20 to 30 outages every month. Don't take my word for it. Status.azure.com, status.amazon, AWScloud.com, आप जाएं. You'll see it, even DigitalOcean and everybody. But it depends on how you build the resiliency around it. अब जब HA की बात करते हैं, high availability is not an opt-in feature set of cloud. It's a hygiene feature set. When somebody comes to the cloud, वो as it is assumption में है और ठीक assumption में है कि everything from the compute to the network to the storage to every component in between is high available. High available का मतलब क्या है? Redundant. Redundant का मतलब ये है कि can work in isolation. And that's how we built it ourselves. So अगर मैं छोटी सी मिसाल दूँ, we have compute clusters that are more than 50-60 racks large. Compute cluster एक बैठ गया, some other compute cluster will take over. It's called VR की ज़बान में कहते हैं vMotion. अगर आप Zen की ज़बान में बोले तो VM spinning, and there's so many different words you can call it. And it's supposed to take over. Same with storage. जैसे Owais के साथ हुआ, आपका data एक जगह बैठा है, अगर collapse कर गया, it needs to be distributed architecture, where that data is instantly available for someplace else. Maybe not automatically, maybe manually, but at least it's available somewhere. Same with the switching and the network fabric. Okay? To give you an example, RapiCompute went to software-defined back in 2016, and that time, जो proprietary company है, मशहूर वो तो software-defined बिल्कुल नहीं. But we went into open switches, open routers, open network. Then we went into software-defined storage for this exact reason कि यार ऐसे customer को ऐसी resiliency देनी है. Then on the computes, we went from proprietary compute stacks to x86 commodity architecture. And we followed people like Facebook who work on open compute, make their own systems. We followed people like AWS, we spoke to them, followed people like Azure who work on absolute commodity architecture, जो कहीं से भी आपको दुनिया में मिल जाएगा, because it's not about the boxes anymore. It's about the architecture, how you set it up and what you do. Which is why today we're very proud in saying that we have a lot of international partners as well, that along with having services on AWS, Azure, DigitalOcean and other countries, obviously to operate in Pakistan, they need to have the legal aspect of being in Pakistan. So we get validations every month for our services because they benchmark us against a lot of these leading services. And very honestly, it sounds like rocket science. If you're willing to put in the hours and not cut corners, it's not really rocket science. It is the best practices out there, and we try to follow them to the maximum. So people like Wes, who have sensitive data, and Fintech factories have bata rahe the, our entire interaction is with startups. Okay? And startups host on my cloud for free. And in a lot of these cases, these startups are more dependent on me than any of these bigger companies. Because they're putting on their Sunday best. They're putting on their best foot forward. They want to show everybody कि मेरा जो product है, मेरी जो app है, मेरी जो service है, वो इतनी अच्छी है कि आप उसमें $2 lakh, $1 lakh, $1 million, and you've all been hearing the views, and there's decent investment being going around. Now imagine if a startup would come and उसकी application ना चले या database ना चले और वो किसी UBL को, किसी सुनेरी को, किसी HBL को present कर रहा हो. At that point he doesn't care कि मैं उसको service free में दे रहा हूँ. It's the least of his problem. At that time he's saying यार आपने मेरी किश्ती दबा दी, मुझे तो investment मिलनी थी. अब ये set of investors तो मुझसे कभी बात नहीं करेंगे. So when me and Owais work with these startups, it's actually a lot more stress-inducing for us to give them that kind of service. So a lot of people think it's always related to money. It's really not. Government sector क्या मिसाल ले लें? Government sector is usually the most largest paying sector in our country, because they never have funds, right? But imagine running the Navy or running, any of these services or any of the other government like FPR and everybody else on your cloud. You will realize that commercials are very far mile away in your mind. It's more about running these services properly. So yeah, it's about following best practices when it comes to architecture, and also relying on skill set that you can produce internally. And a lot of these today, like Faisal is saying, 71% of their infrastructure is virtualized, and for that they have to depend on these great virtualization evangelists within UBL, जो advocate करते हैं उनके लिए करना है. Similarly for us, we have been very fortunate to have these great engineers and DevOps guys in our company that have convinced us over the years to let go of these proprietary stacks that create dependency. Because no cloud provider worth its salt. आप AWS ले लें, DigitalOcean ले लें, कोई भी ले लें, कोई भी किसी proprietary stack पे नहीं है. हर कंपनी ने अपना stack develop किया है, start जैसे भी किया हो, अपना stack develop किया है, अपनी DevOps की है, उस resiliency के लिए और उस flexibility. And that is exactly what we've done. And I think as long as you keep doing that, you're always in the green.
I think that's a very valid point. So when I used to define, I've designed two, let's be honest, two public cloud infrastructures for very large telecoms, one in the Middle East and one in Pakistan. And one of the key decision making for us was that you should not block us in on any part. It has to be absolutely open source. We can use commodity infrastructure. So yeah, we do Pura SDN at that point. So that was the leading open source SDN at that point. And every major vendor, this is about 2014-15 time, every major vendor was trying to lock us in with at least one of their layers. So we saw with IBM trying to put in their WebSphere as part of the OpenStack. Huawei trying to do a proprietary compute layer, so we are embedded to the hardware. So every major vendor was trying to be, for both cases, we ended up going with Ubuntu canonical, right? So that was the purely commoditized. So that's a very great decision for public cloud. But Faisal, I think would like to hear your thoughts, because you have a very difficult decision. I mean, I'm sure the network guy and you that I know for a long time would be dying to try it out, but you have a huge responsibility towards guaranteeing continuity and making them more comfortable with your decision. So you really have to balance this part between your love for truly open source and flexible versus a proprietary, a bit more secure solution. So what did you choose, and going forward, would you stick to that decision maybe like in 2 years' time as technology moves forward? So this is
very, very interesting question. When we started off with this journey, the first thing that I still remember, it still sounds like ages have passed. That was sometime back in 2000.
So your voice went ahead.
So 2000, back in 2000, when we used to get things moving, I still remember the first thing that I get questioned is, how many servers are you buying from me? And from there we started to change this mindset. And in 2006-07, when we started this journey, and the first time I started telling people, no, we're not buying any server. People actually got shocked. So and there was a lot of resistance at the same time, because they thought it's their prerogative. But we started to change that then. But then, when we started over the early days, it's 2019 today, and I'm referring back to 2006. Back then, what we realized, and the thought process that we had on the drawing board is, why are we doing all of this? The question that we asked ourselves, is it that we want to save money? Is it that I'm growing too fast? Or what is it that I'm trying to achieve? What is my end state objective? So everybody approached it in a different way. Some came back to us, it's very cost effective. Some came back to us in a different dimension. And then we came up with our own internal thing. And we said, no, we are changing this for the customer experience, which means my end user, which is within the bank. So now, if you see, it's very objectively driven out statement that I am turning this bank into a cloud native ready or a private cloud ready platform. But my objectivity is not that I'm going to save money, but I'm going to change the experience of my customers. That in itself is a very huge, big statement to make at any given point in time. Because then it does not actually block the ambit that I'm going to virtualize. No, you don't virtualize. You change the experience. So now, when I say change the experience starts. So you are interacting with me. What is it that you're expecting of me? Which means that I want the availability 24/7 by 365. Which translates into that today my SLA is written in, so that's back in 2005, if I was guaranteeing 90% uptime. Means all of a sudden I said I will be 99.5% available. So 99.5% availability of the server means nothing. So it means that it needs to be available to the end. So can I guarantee a human capital behind it to deliver? No, we can't. Because it's a huge man of armies that we need to deploy. So we went through the transition and then we architected this solution. And I think very nicely touched by Imran that you don't cut corners while you're doing such decisions. When you are architecting something like this, you need to actually refer to the end state. So while we're trying to perfect this, one thing that came to our mind, what happens if in the middle of the night, and it happens to be some public holidays, and my public facing website goes down? What happens then? The answer that we got, that my actual response time would be at best about 2 to 3 hours. So that means somebody has to come out of this. So somebody needs to know, somebody needs to call somebody, he needs to be available, he needs to go to the office, and he needs to do something. So 5 statements out of 1. So I said, is it what this investment is all about, that my response time is still down to 2 to 3 hours? So then we went back to the drawing board. And then we actually included certain technologies. So I'm practically natively trying to avoid getting into names what we did not, because some of them lead to some corporate security modules. So now today, touch wood, and it's by design my digital assets by automating the way they're now ready, that the maximum outage I will face is 30 seconds. And that's without any human intervention. So I don't go to work, my guys don't go to work, the system goes down, some decision gets done somewhere without human intervention, and something, that same digital asset comes up into another data center. Now imagine the amount of details we get into. So now if you look at it, this is where, and very nicely somebody put it, the devil is in the details. So you've done everything, the last thing you forgot that I have an A record published in my DNS. And my digital asset will not become available until I go and change the A record. So then I go back and look, all right, for me to change the A record, I will change it in, let's say, 5 minutes. For the word propagation can take up to 24 hours. How do you control that? This is why I say you don't go and buy solutions, you first architect and first, and you try to see through the details what are you actually trying to get as an end state objective. So our end state objective was, coming back to where I started, was to change the experience of the end user. So today, I don't have to go and change an A record. I don't have to worry about the propagation delays. My all assets come up, and the delay we have purposely kept 30 seconds. I can even reduce it to 0 seconds. But I've kept it that way because of certain purpose that we want to keep. That's how you, then it's about sizing. So you do not start oversubscribing because all of a sudden you realize, I can cut corners, I've realized. So you start cutting corners. Going to a depth, and generally what we overlook, okay, VM, either way, the virtual environments are, I'm not going to be brand specific, so whether you use the hypervisor or you use the VMs or you do any other open source or anything. If you want the details, what happens if, so let's say for an argument saying you are running the blade service. So you worked out a blade failure, but have you worked out the chassis failure? Is your cluster cross enough around the chassis as well? So how is the V motion going to work if your chassis is going to fail altogether? These are the details that you need to go. So how are you going to subscribe to it? Are you going to leave out 30% peaking load? Are you going to leave out 10% peaking load? Are you going to leave out 50% peaking load? It drives out your ROI and the TCO. So you need to go down to those details. You've done everything, and then what happens next? How are you going to take your backups? Where are you going to keep them? For how long are you going to keep them? The cloud would not take those away. You still need to make sure, depending upon the sensitivities of your data, you still need to have plans around them. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to get at is, whatever you do, again, the devil is in the details, and we need to make sure that we touch each and every corner of an experience. Do not see cloud as a technology. See cloud as an experience, and what are you trying to get out of it? Either that is security, either that is your availability, either that is your sizing, either that is your performance. If you don't want to run a marathon, make sure you decide and lay the rules first beforehand. Trust me, everything on this. How and how deep have you thought through the process? And that's how we have done the cloud provisioning at our end. And Alhamdulillah, for the last couple of years, we've been running more than 99.5% uptime.
I have another question, sir, before we go to and we are happy to take any questions. So most of the chat, so if you have questions, raise your hand and we will bring the mic to you. So before we go on and take Imran's input on that, so UBL has a history, right, as a centralized computing node. You used to do time sharing of your mainframe to smaller times, right? So today, I think you're quite, in terms of big banks, you're quite ahead of the curve in terms of your cloud infrastructure. What little I know of the other banks of your comparable size. So is there a thought process, and I know you get this question, of becoming a service provider like the old times and spinning it off as a unit or providing service to other banks as well? Is that a thought process that's ever come up in the discussions?
So generally we do that for our own growth. So
may I add something?
So you want to ask something?
Yeah.
Okay,
I want to add something.
A question.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I actually assumed the name of the bank UBL. Actually, just two banks have crossed the numbers of branches, 1,200 branches in them. So you call the end user of your system is the customer, but don't you think the end user of customer might be the employees of the front office or back offices and centralized processing unit?
So to answer your question, when I say customer, anybody who is a technology user is a customer of IT. So it is immaterial whether he is internal or he is an end user. So the way it is provisioned, retail bank is my customer, and retail bank's customer is my customer.
Okay.
So I hope that answers your question. So to answer your question, I, I don't think that we actually had a discussion around offering it to other smaller banks or opening it up for any other enterprises. Because as a fintech, as a bank, there are other concerns which the way we keep it, but we run it as if required for our own group. So UBL as a bank, then we have a UBL Amin, which is the Islamic arm of UBL, and we have UBL Insurers, which is our insurance company, and then we have UBL Fund Manager, which is our fund management arm, and then we have UBL International Operations. Because I look after the global IT bank, so our private cloud does offer to all our geo boundaries, whether inside Pakistan or outside Pakistan, because we do have operations outside Pakistan. So we are a service provider internally. Whether we want to go public or not, but that's, I don't think, because we have enough amount of work at our end.
Right, what about the ecosystem?
Yeah.
So I add to that, so now let's say I'm a fintech and I want to work with UBI. So because of the data privacy and security concerns, would you prefer that, it's co-located and you manage it, how you segregate it is something, because I know that you are working with multiple fintechs, your data division. So are they hosted internally? Are they provisioning them? So
To answer your question, the way we architected this, because we had a lot of debate around it, so how are we going to handle the fintech part? If you were to do the fintech in-house, it's going to be very costly, because we are mandated by certain regulations, and we need to make sure that we are going and fully compliant at all legal points in time, unlike any small enterprise, because that's the cost of running a business. So the answer is that how do we stay relevant? Because I'm big, yes, very good, I'm proud of that. But again, the question is how long I can sustain that model is a very good question. So we always have this question that we are leading, we are big, but we want to be in the big boys game, and we're going to maintain that position, which does not mean that we do not entertain the other ecosystems. So very carefully evaluating that, then I'm actually proud to say that we will be ready to interact in a very secure manner with any fintechs by the end of Q3, which means that we will publish all required APIs for integration by the end of Q3 of this year, next year.
That's a good calendar year.
Yeah.
Financial year will come next year.
Yeah, so 2019. I saw some expressions, so I think this is RIP. Big boys game, which means another 5 to 10 years. So no, it's Q3 this year, which is 2019, not the financial year, not the calendar year. We're taking a leap jump into some other spaces, which will be surprising for the industry to know that we have actually started addressing that. So to answer your question comfortably, by another 2 to 3 months, we'll be ready to allow fintechs to integrate consumer APIs in a far more secure manner than just being. So we make the sandbox available to them through secure APIs.
That's great. So you want to add to the earlier part, right?
So to the early part, as I was saying, so on the last part that you said, I want to talk about that first about the general practice or the prudency of running an IT operation doesn't really change whether you go to a cloud or you don't. There are certain practices, and this is the conversation I have with a lot of my customers when they're coming on board. And they and their owners of the companies, they believe that cloud pe aa rahe, so all the burden is off our shoulders or something like that. But that's not really the case. It's more of a means to an end rather than the end itself, right? So I've had a lot of customers, and and customers may or may not take managed services from me. In the latter case, I wouldn't know what they're doing, on my cloud and how they're going about it. But there are many customers who don't take data backups, who stop following their protocols in terms of offsite data backup or even redundant data backups or redundant applications or multi-data applications, whatever you call it. And then when their own systems go down, even when my cloud doesn't go down, even when their own systems go down, they're sometimes left without anything to hold on to, any adjacent infrastructure where they can re-provision themselves work. And that is why when they realize that cloud company नहीं था कि आपने अपनी कमीज छोड़ देनी है या how you work around it आपने छोड़ देना है. It means that there's now an ecosystem there that can make your work, that can address certain problems that you had. Maybe your problem was scalability, maybe your problem was efficiency, maybe जहाँ आपका दफ्तर था वहाँ data center बनाने की कोई जगह नहीं थी, तो आपने सोचा यार मैं अपनी एप्लीकेशन क्लाउड में ले आता हूँ, मेरे पास रियल एस्टेट नहीं है. But that doesn't mean कि आप एप्लीकेशन ठीक तरीके से डिजाइन नहीं करेंगे, या आप रिडंडेंट नहीं रखेंगे, या आप डेटा बैकअप नहीं लेंगे, या आप पॉलिसी और प्रोसीजर्स फॉलो नहीं करेंगे. So that discipline has to be there. That discipline needs to be there. It's not that most technologies work, but if you don't really know how to work them, then it doesn't matter कि आप Mercedes चलाएंगे, ऑटो चलाएं या मैनुअल चलाएं. अगर आपको गाड़ी चलाने नहीं आती है, फिर तीनों जो है वो खंभे पे मार देनी है. So it doesn't really make a difference what kind of car you buy, right? So
I just wanted to ask a little bit about so you working with a lot of startups, right?
Yeah.
So what are the primary considerations? So one thing is it's not practical to build a data center anymore, right? And most of them can afford it. But apart from that, so there are many options, right? So they could go to something like a AWS, a Google Cloud, Azure. You offer freebies, they offer freebies. So what is the primary driver for ecosystem partners to come and work with you locally? And how many active startups are there? I mean, not all of them big names, right?
I'll start off replying to something Faisal said and also relating to your question. So one of the biggest things that's changed in the public cloud space, especially public cloud space, because obviously private cloud में आपको किसी बाहर वाले को डिटेल नहीं करना. One of the major questions that are asked, or the conversation that's changed in public cloud, is people don't really talk about the commercial aspect, which is a good thing. But what people or good IT managers generally ask is what this can do for my business. So put that in perspective. So if you meet e-commerce companies, right, or companies that run transactional workloads, it could be POS machine companies or switch operators, or like I said, e-commerce companies like Taraz or Kevo. So conventional hardware and the kind of questions that people used to ask was different. But after cloud became prevalent, or after they interacted with us and other people in the cloud space, the questions that were asked were very business driven. So, for example, one of the very exciting meetings I had was with Kevo and Taraz, both in the e-commerce space. And one of the questions that was asked for relevance was not from their IT team, but was from their marketing team. And the marketing team actually asked me, I really want to do a lot of these sales events like they do in China. They have Singles Day and so many things. They said, hey, I want to do Halloween, I want to do Valentine's, I want to do Pakistan Day, Defense Day, everything of that sort. But my infrastructure team keeps telling me that even if you keep doing 17, 18, 20 events every year, there's a lot of hits that come to the website. You always have to be engaged in planning infrastructure. हर दिन आपने अक्सर देखा होगा ब्लैक फ्राइडे पे वेबसाइट बैठ जाती है, फिर आधे घंटे बाद फिर ऊपर जाती है because ट्रैफिक कितना आता है. And in Pakistan is in the stage right now where it's very difficult to determine traffic कितना आएगा, because the uptake of broadband and computing is so fast in the teams and even in privileged individuals. Every time there's a sale or every year the event happens, it actually got.
What's with the racist ageist comment of middle
So then the questions were actually asked by the marketing team. If we go to the cloud, and they asked a very pointed thing, how can I leverage it to capitalize on my marketing? How many more events a year can I do? How many more sale events can I do? How long can these campaigns be? And how interesting can I make it? Because suddenly, what the impression that they got from my conversation was, क्या आज हम prepare करते हैं लाख बंदा 2 लाख बंदा एक महीने में इस सेल पे ऐसा आएगा. But if I can scale on one time to handle 5 lakh customers, 10 lakh customers, then I can pretty much let my marketing side run by it and plan so many different things. Now that's a very interesting conversation to have, because suddenly you're using a highly technical product to answer a very commercial question, which is how do I leverage my existing product to create more value out of me using your cloud. And now coming to the starting point. So this is a question that a lot of companies are asking and a lot of new IT managers are asking. who are not lost in the legacy of things. Now, when you come to startups, we're talking about Owais from Fintech Factory, ages of 21 to 26, 27, 28. So, not the accelerated part, people, it's that of thing. And then you're going on to 30s, mid 30s, even early 40s in some cases. Now, they are mostly bootstrapped. Right? I think you're taking it.
About my age, yeah.
Now, most of these companies are bootstrapped. Which means कि या तो अपने बचाए हुए पैसे होते हैं from their previous jobs और चाचा मामा खाला वहाँ पे पैसे होते हैं. So these people don't have money for luxuries. They're putting everything they have into development. Or if they don't have a tech product, then outreach. So if it's not a tech product, then they're spending money on traveling, on outreach, on marketing, and to basically impress as many investors as they can. So one of the key considerations when they interact with people like us, or even people with AWS, is how can we facilitate them in meeting their objectives, technical or otherwise. So for example, when we're doing Fintech Factory and other things in the West, the fintechs are not only interested in cloud, right? But they also wanted premises to carry on their engineering efforts. Sometimes they could not afford a CTO or technical staff. So many of them requested that, when we have a prototype, would your development team or DevOps team be interested in guiding us through our mistakes and to help us how we can do it better? So we did that. A lot of people said, we work out of this facility, could you give us subsidized internet? So we spoke to our parent company, which was Fibernet or Strong Fiber, and we gave them free or subsidized internet. So many more things. So startups actually require a lot more handholding. In the US, Amazon and a lot of the companies do that. They have these incubation centers, they have startup centers that they facilitate. In Pakistan, we try our best to play that role. And we did that through Fintech Factory, where we try to offer startups a lot of comfort in everything that they wanted to do. For a lot of them, they also conducted our investor pitches at our premises. कोई बाहर से अमेरिका वगैरह से investor pitch हो रही, they used our video call, they used our premises internet to pitch their product. And this is besides the cloud itself. And then obviously when you come to the cloud, so the hosting and the engineering and teaching them how to scale. Now a lot of these people have a product, but they're not that technically qualified to understand a simple question. These are customer आएंगे तो आप क्या करेंगे? How do you scale? So these are very fundamental questions that you have to answer when you're developing software. एक तो ये हो गया. Secondly, regulatory side. So then you have to do a fintech. Now what do you do? So what Amazon tells you is कि RapiCompute जो आपको $100 में चीज दे रहा है, मैं $70 में दे दूंगा. But for next time. But क्या आप $30 बचाने के लिए मुझसे बाहर जा सकते हैं? Because what we covered with our cloud and other people who operate locally, guarantee that your infrastructure is local, you have to. Because in government and public-private infrastructure, तो ऐसा तो हो नहीं सकता कि आपने Amazon से account लेके reseller बनेंगे. It's not really that easy to do. So what if you have a fintech? Like I said, मैंने पहले example बैंक की दी थी, मैं Pulse from back in 2011. But what if you have fintechs or like West and Texas and others? So then there's a regulatory part. Because then what you need to do is you need to integrate with the bank. Then you need to integrate the payment gateway. Then you need to have money flowing through the system. When you have things like that happening, you can't really go to an Amazon or like a Azure or a DataOcean or whatever. And like Faisal said that he's been advocating from the bank's part, we have been very aggressively been advocating from the service provider's part. International clouds definitely should play a part in the local economy because it increases the size of the pie exponentially for everybody. But they should put their skin in the game. Infrastructure should be local, companies should be local, employment should be local, so that data is local. Similarly, for local cloud providers such as ourselves, the State Bank and other financial regulatory authorities should be a bit more broad-minded and put the checks, balances, and controls that there are there in European countries and other countries where cloud providers are definitely allowed to serve the financial sector and the government. And it would be our prerogative to comply, and that we would do. So, जब हम financial world में आते हैं, so I'll be very honest, I run a lot of bank systems and obviously not core banking because we're not allowed to do. Not that we can host because most of them are proprietary stacks and won't run on under x86 architecture. But we run a lot of banking and fintech systems. In fact, out of the 7 fintechs that operate in Pakistan today, Nami Gami Log bhi hain on the radio wallet side, 5 of them are hosted with us and 4 of them actually took birth on RapiCompute in terms of from development side. So we've been audited multiple times. So So we've been audited by private auditors. We've conducted several state bank audits as well. We have conducted several international audits as well, and we've been audited by the government and intelligence forces as well.
I think that's where the local cloud comes in handy, because especially if you're just an e-commerce provider, you can be anywhere. Although the ping times will always be much better on a local cloud for local traffic, but if you have any regulatory compliance requirement, and if someday we come up with something like GDPR for Pakistan, and that says, hey, then the world is heading in that direction.
Sorry,
Sorry, one second. Can you go ahead?
Offering or maintaining a uptime is better for the customer. But what about the protection level? Sorry, the protection level. Protection related to your devices.
Yes, right. Okay. So just to let you know, protection की अगर बात करें तो अब मैं सिर्फ local cloud की बात कर रहा हूँ, इस topic को generally. So we took a bold step many years ago, and we are currently the only ISO and PCI DSS 3.2.1 certified cloud service provider in Pakistan. Faisal will tell you there are very few financial organizations that are PCI DSS 3.2.1 certified, and our recent certification was in June, which means that the data protection standards on our cloud are of the highest level. अच्छा PCI type की जो certification होती है ना, उसमें सिर्फ fintech का फायदा नहीं है, उसमें 370 control होते हैं. So even if you're not a fintech, even if you're someone who sells baby toys online, it's still relevant to you, because that means that the system has checks and balances that allow you to protect your customer and your own data and intellectual property. Number one. Number two, being local offers us an advantage. Many of our sensitive customers would like to bypass the internet completely. Doing that on Amazon or Azure would be pretty costly, because you have to take like an IP MPLS or IPVPN circuit. But either you can pretty much take a domestic circuit from anybody, connect point to our data center, and on an L2 or an L3 circuit. In fact, you can advertise, our cloud would allow you to advertise your own subnets, your own LAN IP scheme. Your print server would be on our cloud as well, and the printer would come out in your own office. So that level of data protection and virtual and physical. There is no और बहुत बातें in terms of then the data abstraction on the SANs, then the data abstractions on the switch fabrics, then the VLAN isolations. There's so many things that you have to do to comply with regulatory bodies that, and like I said, in 2017 we published ourselves as an open audit company. So which also means that any customer should bring any auditor of choice and do a spot audit on our infrastructure. So that allows us to give that level of protection. Not to mention, we have the largest InfoSec managed service product called Titanium, through which we ourselves offer InfoSec services to customers hosted on our platform. Just like Amazon ka ThreadGuard वगैरह है. So yeah, so that's kind of thing that we do.
I would just like to add something to what you just had asked. So there are two parts of the security. One is it that you can pass it on, yours, which is what Imran had just addressed. So it means the physical security, which is the infrastructure security. Please do remember, while you're developing the applications, you must have the applications being done and reviewed by the application security architects. Where we go generally wrong by saying this, that the cloud will address it. No, it will not. You need to set the rules of the game yourself. So you need to first define what is it that you're trying to protect, what is the worth, how you're going to architect that. Then you're going to leverage, and part of it you're going to pass it on to infrastructure. It's never going to be the other way around. So please do make sure that we don't take away this message that cloud is going to take care of everything. So application security architecture, patching is your job, will remain your job. And then you will only do the infrastructure.
So I want to add to just to give you an idea, if I have 10 websites running on my cloud, and if 10 of them get hacked, 10 of them have an SQL injection problem, which is a problem in the code. It's never the system.
What about the latency? In case of DDoS attack,
Yes,
so
sir.
the website hosted on your cloud and get received by the attacker.
Okay, so you need to, so cyber crime is a sophisticated crime. So you hardly see things happening on the roads these days. So you see on the electronic highways, the ones in the zeros getting hacked. So you need to understand is the security is a layered approach. So the way it gets done, and again it gets driven by. So you need to work out what is it that you're trying to protect, and based on that level of protection, you're going to invest in those. So you're never going to protect $1 asset with $1,000 of investments, and neither vice versa. So to answer your question, is on the infrastructure side, it's a multi-layered. So when you talk about DOS and DDoS, so you need to ask yourself a question: at what point in time and where in the infrastructure you want to protect what? So do I want to protect everything at my level, or you want to get some level of protection at the infra side? So, for example, your service providers, depending on you're going for grade 1, level 2, level 3 service providers, some of them would offer you a protection of DOS and DDoS attacks up to 7 GB. That's at their gateway. What will they do? They'll do that. But then comes your parameter. Do you know your traffic? Do you know your traffic rules? So infrastructure will not do much. You need to understand what is your traffic. At our level, I don't really want to get into too many details, but the way we see the security at the bank, our infrastructure guys, we can have best of the breeds of the firewalls. If I don't know the two things that you need to know, your traffic and the risk against, and then you need to draw a vector of attack. And you need to take a posture based on that. So DOS and DDoS is the old time. It hardly happens now. There are far more sophisticated things that would happen into your infrastructure. So it is very important that when you are actually laying down the foundation stone, you do understand the traffic patterns, and you do actually write down the vector of attacks. You will never be able to achieve 100% security. At the same time, you need to be able to draw the compensating controls. Now, depending on the industry in which you are operating, this would vary. Multi-layer defense. So now, giving you an example, so I like to be very, very neutral, so I will not take names. So if you have a firewall which is on your perimeter, it's a product A, is that enough? That's a decision you need to take. You need to have a second layer, it's a decision you need to take. Are the both can be from the same product line? Is a decision you need to take. Now that defines again how much level of deterrence and protection you are creating. So the argument would be the product A is a firewall, product B is a firewall, so what is the fun in having A and B? The point is that A and B will help you to create a level of deterrence. That means it's a given that everything, absolute security does not exist. It is just that how secure you are and how much time do you have to react in case you need to react to a certain situation. And that drives your state of readiness in an organization. And that's how you start planning your security layers. So will the firewall address everything? No, it will not. So like Imran just said, the websites. You need to take them behind a web, which is a web application firewall, which is a non-traditional firewall, because the things are getting sophisticated. Will the web protect the website? No, it will not. Do I still need to upgrade? Yes, I still need to upgrade. Do I still need to go and architect it in a secure way? Yes, I still need to go and architect it that way. Do I still need to patch it every now and then? Yes, I still need to patch it. And is that good enough? No. I still need to go and do the bare metal patching. Are you going to patch your firmware? Are you going to patch your operating system? Are you going to patch your application? And are you going to patch your infrastructure? So every layer needs to be patched to make sure that you can sleep in the night.
I'll tell you a very funny story. So these tell, that, I know Faisal is very technically goes down, but the biggest thing is that, so our dev server was also on the cloud, and the guys, the developers being developers, went with standard SA password for MySQL, right? So we got this ransom note, hey, if you hijacked your server and pay us this much in Bitcoin, so we would know that it was okay, screw it, this product. They said, okay, we'll redeploy. But this happens. People leave standard passwords. So security is always a state of mind. It's not about the software you put in. I mean, they all help, but it's a framework. It's a mental framework. Are you designed to be secure? And also, it's, what is the value of your asset, right? So you can build a Fort Knox, but if you're protecting your plants with that, it's not going to work, right? If you're building Fort Knox, you might as well have that much gold in the water. So it's definitely a very, very trade-off decision. But yeah, the basics, housekeeping, whether it's infrastructure uptime, whether it's security, anything is about stick to the basics, get the basics right. I think most of the business will survive with that, with all the tools that's available today.
And I just want to add one thing to the security. I don't want to do it too much there. I just picked up security.
You want to be better.
Sure. But please do understand that you guys, I'm not sure your areas of interest, but I'm sure most of you are from the Fintech and all those domains. Please do understand that you do inculcate the culture that your juniors, because startups are normally by the best players. So you make sure that you inculcate the culture that they do take an advice from. I'll give you a very small piece of advice. So how it all starts. So you have a fresh graduate in college, and you have written a fantastic piece of code, and you said, all right, I think we complete this. So now he's too shy because that's a human nature to interact. He said, I'm going to ask my boss, but he's going to say, and he just graduated with 4 GPA, but he knows nothing. So what he does, he cuts a piece of the code and he puts it on Google. And he searches what is it. In a blog, he gets the answer. What he doesn't realize that blog that he has put in there had also a backdoor entry to the system. So this is how the security is inculcated. It's not only about security. Please do take care of a cultural grooming in whichever domain you are working, that people do feel confident that they are able to ask, and this culture moves around. And it's a long way for us to go.
I think very well put about culture, and this is, he's right, it goes top down because it's a mindset. When we started doing InfoSec last year as a service, so one of the first products, one of the simplest products we started with was something called the SEAM, which is Security and Incident Management, which basically traffics monitors malicious traffic on your assets. Like you said, the most valuable assets you have. And so obviously, initially it was a fact-finding mission. We were starting new in that area. So we met a lot of financial and non-financial companies. And what we realized was that majority of them had licenses for some of the best SEAMs out there, 3-letter companies, 4-letter companies, whatever. Less than half of them had actually implemented them. And 100% of them were using that license or certification just to make the auditors happy that they have something installed in their network. Now, when an organization takes that posture, कल को वो आईटी वाला किसी और कंपनी में चले जाएगा, जूनियर भी वैसे ही जाएगा, वो भी आगे से करेगा. The importance of the security culture. Until मैं एक specific tool की बात कर रहा हूँ, but I'm just saying that this is exactly how organizations fail and exactly how they succeed as well. Where people within the organization take things seriously, have discussions, and create a conversation around it. Yeah? How do we make our organization better? Even when they don't know the answers, but they discuss how to make their organization better. At the same time, there are people really couldn't care less, and that's the kind of people that they produce.
Yeah, I have a question, but before I want to add something to the security, just a question. This I have, as what you said. So I could understand that in the cyber world, security is a regular and continuous practice, and there's nothing like perfect security in cyber world. That's what I'm saying.
Nothing?
Like perfectly secure in cyber world, because everything you have to change it. But my question was about the e-commerce, as you said, about the cloud services. You have mentioned about something about fintech factories and other additional benefits that you're offering to them along with the server or business cloud server. And also you mentioned about the meeting with you and that. But being an entrepreneur or startup of e-commerce, can you tell me what are the basic few benefits to for an e-commerce startup?
Basic benefits.
basic, the 2, 3, 4, whatever the list, benefits for a e-commerce startup or e-commerce business with having like 500 or 1000 traffic a day to the cloud. What are the basic few benefits? Technical side, no other than that, you are offering that.
Technical side.
Yeah, for the cloud side only. Means whatever you are offering other than the cloud, like you are giving it places and
Again, one of the things to first of all, whenever you have a public facing product, whether that's an e-commerce website or whether that's a Kareem app, they're all public facing, right? And your revenue is 100% dependent on how many people see it. So your first question has to be availability. It has to be available 24/7, especially in the case of e-commerce. अगर आप दराज वगैरह के traffic patterns देखें तो आपको मिल जाएंगे analytics से. There are people, there are thousands of people who shop 2 बजे सुबह.
Mostly
There's no time. Anybody gets a chance. सुबह उठ के washroom जा रहा है, अगर ऐप पे guide आ जाए तो वहीं पर flash screen कर दी. So you need to be, if you talk about e-commerce, you need to be available at any point in time. A. Number one, you need to be consistently available at any point in time. You can't have peaks and troughs in your performance of your interaction with the customer. अब देखें, जैसा करीम की मिसाल है, बहुत देवली के ट्रैफिक बहुत होता है ना. अब अज्यूम करें करीम आपको जो ट्रैफिक टाइम पे आप बुक करते हैं वो आपको पीक फैक्टर बताते हैं, एवरीबॉडी नोस दिस राइट. लेकिन अज्यूम करें इसका मतलब क्या है, इस वक्त मेरे पास बहुत बुकिंग्स आ रही हैं, मेरे पास ड्राइवर कम है. पीक फैक्टर का एक ही मतलब है, ड्राइवर कम है, यूजर ज्यादा है. ठीक है जी. अज्यूम करें कि अगर इसका मतलब यूजर ज्यादा है, अगर ऐप को स्लो चलनी तो शुरू हो जाए और करीब आपको जस्टिफाई करेगा यार पीक फैक्टर है, 10 लाख लोग एक साथ यूज करें, यार मैं क्या करूं, ऐप स्लो चलेगी, डाइवर्ट. अगर ऐसा कभी किसी के साथ हुआ कभी. So when you talk about public facing product, you talk about A, 24/7 availability and 24/7 consistent. C, modifications and changes and additions to your service offering. Okay? आप जब यूजली अपने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे कुछ करते हैं, you have a very difficult startup की बात कर रहा हूँ, not companies of the stature of UBL or HBL. जब startup में है, आपने अपना bootstrap किया हुआ है, हो सकता है Unicenter से एक सर्वर लाके आपने उसके ऊपर होस्ट किया हुआ है, बेसिक कमोडिटी इंटरनेट देके उसके पीछे 20-30 MB कनेक्शन लगाया हुआ है उसको पब्लिश करने के लिए. जब आप ये चीज खुद करते हैं ना, ये वेरी हार्ड डिसीजन टू मेक. अगर मैं इसको चेंज करूंगा, अपडेट करूंगा, मॉडिफाई करूंगा, मुझे इसको डाउन करना पड़ेगा. सही होता है, चाहे कोड चेंज करना हो, चाहे सर्वर के कंपोनेंट चेंज करने. So सारी बात है, वो अगर आप एक ई-कॉमर्स बिजनेस चला रहे हैं, आपके लिए कमर्शियल है, एनी मिनट दैट यू आर अवेलेबल इज अ कॉस्ट. बट आप क्लाउड में क्या करते हैं, ये चीज चल रही होती है, पहले में खड़े होते हैं, चलती हुई चीज का डेटा. मैं बहुत सिंपल बता रहा हूँ, इतना सिंपल मेरी अदर चलेगी मिसाल के तौर पे कि आप डेटा माइग्रेट करते हैं, जो नई चीजें नेटिविटी चेंज होगी वहां करते हैं, उस पर अलग डीएनएस असाइन करके उसको अलग टेस्ट करते हैं, जब दिल चाहता है उसको वहां से आप मिलेट करते हैं. ठीक है, ये स्टार्टअप भी यही काम करता है और दराज के सेक्टर का काम भी यही काम करता है. बिकॉज व्हाट यू डोंट रियलाइज इज दैट कंटीन्यूअस चेंजेस. ठीक है, जब आप ई-कॉमर्स काम शुरू करते हैं, आप वर्डप्रेस वेबसाइट बना लेते हैं, क्योंकि आप कहते हैं मेरे पास 400 प्रोडक्ट तो है यार, मैंने तो सिर्फ बेबीज के टॉयज बेचने हैं और फलाना बेचना है और मैटरनिटी क्लोथ बेचने हैं, 400 चीजें तो है. मैं वर्डप्रेस की डिफॉल्ट, जब आप 4000 चीज पे जाता है, आप कहते हैं मुझे बजट तो लगाना पड़ेगा, मुझे ई कॉमर्स की बास्केट ऐड करनी पड़ेगी, मुझे उस पर कार्ट की एनालिटिक्स लगानी पड़ेगी. Then what do you do at that point in time? Then there's a lot of parallel operations that are required. जब आप इस किस्म की सिनेरियोस में होते हैं ना, तो क्लाउड आपको थोड़ा वहां पर इसलिए हेल्प कर देता है क्योंकि आप चीजें सिमल्टेनियसली चला सकते हैं, उनको टेस्ट कर सकते हैं, ड्राई रन कर सकते हैं, स्ट्रेस टेस्ट कर सकते हैं विदाउट एनी सिग्निफिकेंट इन्वेस्टमेंट और ह्यूमन रिसोर्स और टाइम इन्वॉल्व, और आपका ओरिजिनल निजाम चलता रहता है. यही चीज करीम भी करता होगा, यही चीज देवो भी करता होगा, यही चीज वीडियो गेम वाले भी करते हैं, यही चीज एक्सबॉक्स वाले, सारे लोग यही करते हैं, तो यही चीज नेटफ्लिक्स भी करते हैं. तो जब आपके पास ऐसा ट्रैफिक आ जाए या ऐसी कस्टमर इंटरेक्शन आ जाए जब आपके लिए आउटेज देना 99% ऑफ टाइम मुश्किल हो, वहां क्लाउड आपको पैरेलल स्ट्रीम्स की सर्विस देते हुए आपको इनेबल करता है कि आपको चीज कैसे. सो फॉर स्टार्टअप और लेट्स से 400-500 या 1000 यूजर्स, व्हाट आई वुड से इज कि आपने क्लाउड पे 2 इंस्टेंस बना लिए, एक आपका प्राइमरी है, एक आपका टीआर है. कल को आपने मॉडिफिकेशन चेंजेस करने हैं तो आप कर सकते हैं और आपका बिजनेस चलता है.
सर इसी वजह से
just want to add comment. No, you can ask the question and I'll just answer.
I'll let it.
So if you have $1,000 as a start, so let's say $100,000. So let's not be too far. Yes. So let's say you have $100,000 as a start. Where do you invest $100,000? like to invest in investments, setting up infrastructure, which will eventually become a net asset. So the money will be spent, which means you will spend that money in the spaces where you think you can leverage and be productive in terms of your returns on that investment. So generally, on a fresh startups and in that space, you would not like to invest in that domain. So let's say, for example, you are a mid-sized startup and you have enough data that you need about 4 to 10 racks to host that data. That means, because e-commerce is all data, so how many data points you have, so that means you very rapidly grow. So just to give you a perspective, so you may end up spending $1 million to set up those 4 racks, versus you may end up paying X $100 or $1,000 to host that space, and you incrementally grow as you go. So where would you then invest?
Obviously.
So this is where the cloud is, that you get operational efficiency. It's a quick startup model. So the first thing that I do is that I'm a startup, I want to set up, I want to go and buy the server. What happens is, for me, because we belong to different industries, so I'm just trying to correlate. But for you to wait 6 weeks for something to arrive, for you to upgrade, would not make sense. I have a leeway because I work in a different environment, so I can always take 6 weeks lead jump because I have ample resources available. But for a startup to wait 6 to 8 weeks for the equipment to arrive and 4 months to deploy it and 3 months to fine tune it, you don't have that leverage because by then somebody has already taken your spot. So the way I see cloud to the fintechs and the startups and this time to come.
Zero barrier to entry, right?
So I decided I have an idea tomorrow morning.